Bobby, did you want to get us going?
You're on mute. We can't hear you.
There we go. Is that better?
There we go.
Yeah.
Hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everybody to the January 18th, 2022 Port of Bellingham Commission meeting. I'd like to open the public meeting at this time with a roll call. Commissioner Bell.
Here.
Commissioner Shepard.
Here.
And Commissioner Briscoe is here as well. Okay, with that done, I'd like to move to public comment. Do we have anyone for public comment?
No one in the building here. If you're on Zoom and you'd like to identify yourself, please unmute and speak up.
Okay, with no one speaking up, I'll move on to our advisory committee meeting schedule. We have the Marina Advisory Committee meeting, the MAC, at February 8th, I believe it is. Yeah, February 8th at 6 p.m. I'm assuming that'll be here in the conference center. And then we have the Bellingham International Airport Advisory Committee, the BIAC, April 14th at 4 p.m. Well, I guess they're both the Zoom meetings.
Yep, both are on
What
Zoom.
it says here, we're
That's correct.
both Zoom meetings. Okay. All right, consent agenda. Carey, if you please.
Motion to approve consent agenda items A through I.
Commissioner Bell,
I have nothing.
Commissioner Shepard,
Same.
and I have nothing. So Carey, if you please.
Motion to approve consent agenda items A through I.
Commissioner Shepard,
Yes.
Commissioner Bell,
Yes.
Commissioner Briscoe is yes also. So with that done, I guess we're going to recess the public meeting and open a public hearing on the comprehensive scheme of harbor improvement plan. Carey?
Greg McHenry.
Yes. Good evening, commissioners. This is Greg McHenry, Senior Planning Analyst for the Port of Bellingham. And I am going to share my screen, if that's okay. Can everybody see the title page of our comp scheme?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Okay, so we're introducing a new digital format to our comprehensive scheme this year. It's a storyboard format, and it's more divided more along the lines of business instead of regionally, kind of similar to our budget. And I'll just point out a couple of the links at the bottom of the first page, or they're at the top of any subsequent page. Tells a little bit about the port, its various passenger and cargo terminals, our two different harbors, our moorage facilities, other real estate, what some of our public priority programs are. We have a couple policies and strategies in there. Our recently adopted leasing policy for preserving lands for marine trades, as well as inadvertent discoveries. And that's a good placeholder for future strategies, like our vulnerability assessments and sea level rise strategies. So that's where they will go in the future. One recent addition since you've seen this comp scheme last was the addition of a highlight summary map of some capital projects, which will let the public know where some of these projects are located in and around the county. And they're divided up in a similar fashion as the comp scheme is. So the first one's on aviation. We've got a few on marinas, our real estate portfolio projects, our marine terminals, and public priorities. This last tab here on this map section was for our partners at DNR. So they get a sense of what projects we're planning on state-owned tidelands. That's the plan in a nutshell. The purpose of the public hearing is to solicit public comment. So if anybody signed up for that portion of the public hearing, Rob, was there anybody in the room that signed up for that?
No, sir.
Thank you. I believe we've got Jim Kyle that would like to address that on Zoom.
Yes, thank you, Greg. Jim Kyle, Working Waterfront Coalition Government Relations Chair. We do have some comments about the comprehensive scheme draft. And hats off to you, Greg, for pulling us all together. It looks like an amazing project and really time consuming as well. As you know, the coalition worked with the real estate division in the task force process that helped draft this document. We very much appreciate having had that opportunity, and former real estate director Shirley McFerrin deserves a lot of credit for her leadership in making those meetings so productive. This new comp scheme includes a huge amount of easily accessible information that will facilitate public participation, and after all, that's the purpose of this whole exercise. Another improvement in this draft is that it includes proactive policy statements, including Resolution 1396 concerning preserving marine trades properties. While the task force was discussing this resolution, the coalition suggested new limits on residential development in our harbor areas. But because of pushback by port staff, this idea was not included in the resolution draft that you approved unanimously. Considering your recent comments about the residential proposal for Blaine Harbor, we now ask that you consider amending Resolution 1396 in order to discourage additional applications for residential units in the named harbor areas. You should have received a memo from the coalition that explains this proposal. This does seem like the appropriate time for considering this amendment before the revised comp scheme that includes the resolution becomes an action item on your agenda. Thank you for considering this request.
Thanks, Jim, on that. Commissioner Bell, did you receive the email?
I did indeed.
Commissioner Shepherd, you received it?
I did, yes.
And I received it as well, Jim. So we'll probably talk about that before the next meeting, I would assume. I'll have to talk to Rob about that, but thanks for that input, and thank you for the Working Waterfront Coalition's help on putting this comp plan together. Anyone else wishing to speak?
George Dyson here.
George, go ahead.
Yes, so I have two things to say, or actually three. So first of all, as a member of the board of the Working Waterfront Coalition, I also, along with Jim, want to say thanks to both the commissioners and the staff, particularly Shirley, Brian, Brady, and Greg, for all the work we started before the pandemic on this task force to get this plan mapped out. I think it's just great. So, and then personally, not speaking for the coalition, I just want to add my two comments about the new comprehensive plan, which I think is great, but I would love to see some more specific language about the scope of milestones, possibly location for visitor moorage in Whatcom Waterway. It's 32 years since the existing floats were removed, and we were kind of overdue to put that on the map. And the final comment, you probably no surprise, I'd love to see some language in there more specific about Area 3A, which sort of keeps getting left out. That's the very head of Whatcom Waterway. So it's the closest point of access between downtown Bellingham and the Bellingham Bay and the ports management area. And again, it would be great to call that out in the plan so that sort of stays more visible. Thank you very much. Full speed ahead.
Thank you, George. Appreciate that. Anyone else wishing to speak? Okay, no one else wishing to speak on this. And Greg, I'm assuming you're through?
I am.
Okay. Commissioner Bill, any comments or questions?
No, I would just ask that Jim Kyle, if you would just reach out. I think there's a discussion that needs to be had between you and me on the proposal. George, all over yours. Thank you.
Commissioner Shepherd?
Yeah, I think that conversation around the visitor moorage really dovetails in with the conversation and the planning work we need to do around that GP wharf. And I know that's getting teed up with staff where they're putting in some additional time and resources into being able to figure that question out. And I think it's a really important one. And there's going to be increased interest in people being able to dock at our downtown waterfront and being able to enjoy the resources that are there. So I do think it's timely and it fits well with where staff is moving currently. I don't have any other questions at the moment.
Thank you. And George, that's always in the back of my mind. Growing up as a kid, my grandfather had his commercial fishing vessel moored there at Citizens Dock. So I'm aware of what used to be there, and I am aware of what we need to get going and get things back in there. So it's never very far from my thought process what we need to do in that waterway. It's just a matter of all of us getting together and trying to figure out how to do it and how to pay for it. So anyhow, with that's done, I think everybody's through. Any more comments before I close the hearing on this?
I would just mention that I just have one more comment, and that is to let everybody know that we're currently in a SEPA comment period, and we'll be taking comments through February 1st prior to taking action on the comprehensive scheme of harbor improvements.
Okay, thank you on that, Greg.
Mm-hmm.
We'll close the public hearing on the comprehensive scheme of harbor improvement plan and reopen the public meeting. And we'll move to action items. Carey, if you please.
Motion to approve Resolution 1400 establishing Commissioner District boundaries. Greg McHenry.
Greg, did we lose you? You still there?
Greg, are you with us?
I am. I was going to stop sharing my screen for the comp scheme. I didn't have a whole lot to add on this action item. We had a public hearing at the last commission meeting, and nobody spoke in opposition to the redistricting plan. I've received no comments on it. And that's all I have.
Okay, Greg, thank you. Commissioner Bell, any questions or comments?
No, I love the preparation you put into those comments, Greg. It took a lot of time. You're absolutely right. I have nothing more to add.
Commissioner Bell, any comments or questions?
That was just me, buddy. Sorry.
I'm just making sure because you were laughing. Commissioner Shepherd, any comments or questions?
No, we've had this in front of us a couple times, and I think we've seen it inside and out. Thank you.
Yep.
Actually, Greg,
Myself as well.
that was a backhanded way of saying thank you so much for not drawing that out.
Carey, if you please.
Motion to approve Resolution number 1400 establishing Commissioner District boundaries.
Commissioner Bell.
Yes.
Commissioner Shepherd.
Yes.
Commissioner Briscoe is a yes as well. Carries 3-0. And now we're moving to a motion, the next motion. Carey, if you please.
Sure. A motion authorizing the executive director to enter into a one-time grant program agreement with the Department of Ecology to provide state funding for engineering design activities for Lignin Parcel Affordable Housing Project in the Waterfront District, and amend the 2022 strategic budget to increase both environmental remediation and the third-party reimbursement for the Waterfront District for the Lignin Parcel Affordable Housing Project and associated ecology funding. Brian Gouran.
Thanks, Carey, and yeah, apologies for the lengthy action right up there. So thanks for getting through that one. I'm Brian Gouran, Director of Environmental and Planning Services. Yeah, this action item that is part of the ongoing work at the former Lignin parcel located at the corner of Cornwall Avenue and Laurel Street in the Waterfront District. It's also part of the former Georgia Pacific Mill property and is included in the GP West Modca cleanup site. As the commissioners are all well aware, we've been working on this project for a few years now with our project partners at the Department of Ecology, Millworks LLC, and Mercy Housing Northwest on a community benefit project that is also includes an affordable housing component. So we've completed a lot of work on this over the past few years. Last year alone, we finished up a site evaluation that was funded by an integrated planning grant from the Department of Ecology. The commission approved a purchase option with Millworks and Mercy Housing, and we also finalized the cleanup action plan for the chlor-alkali remedial action unit, which includes the Lignin parcel with the Department of Ecology. So all that work has really set us up for the next phase, which is going to focus on more detailed engineering and design, permitting, and hopefully the start of construction by the end of this year on the cleanup project and the the affordable housing project. So with all of those pieces now in place, last year at the end of the year in November, we received notification from the Department of Ecology that the port was eligible for $2.6 million in new funding to address to fund the environmental cleanup on the Lignin parcel affordable housing cleanup project. And this is funding it's a new program at the Department of Ecology. It's actually not even formalized yet. They're still working on the development of this grant program that's aimed at supporting affordable housing projects on sites that still require environmental cleanup. It's a great example of our relationship with the Department of Ecology and how we've worked really closely with them. And so, we're kind of out ahead of the formal process, which provides us some flexibility sometimes, but also we're working in the gray area sometimes as well. So it's a really great opportunity though, from our perspective, because this program is a little different in that it's aimed at those affordable housing projects and will provide up to 100% funding for the environmental cleanup pieces, as opposed to their typical 50%, as long as there's an affordable housing component to the project. So this grant agreement does provide 100% funding for the next phase of work, and it captures or secures a portion of that 2.6 million, about 400,000, to cover the engineering, design, and permitting, which is also already covered under an agreed order with the Department of Ecology. In order to be eligible for funding, we have to be under a legal agreement for them to fund that work. And so when we finish that, we will then amend the consent or the agreed order or enter into a consent decree, and that'll allow us to capture that remaining portions of that $2.6 million. So we are ready to start pursuing that work right now. And so that's a really exciting piece. The fact that we received the notification kind of late in the year last year is the second part of this action item, which this project did not make it into the 2022 budget because we were already pretty far down the road of commission approval. But this action then will amend that 2022 budget to include the $2.6 million, both from a project perspective and then the grant offset. So it's a net zero impact to the port budget. The only other components I just want to make you aware of is there's two pieces that are different than our typical remedial action grants. And so I just want to make sure the commission was aware. It requires that the project includes an inadvertent discovery plan, which we already had in place, which is for the unanticipated encountering of cultural resources or historic resources. And it just describes the process of what you do in that case. We already have that in place, and it's something that's more and more common. We do those already. The other piece, which is a little different, is because this is 100% funding that is tied to the affordable housing project. there is a requirement that the property will have a covenant requiring affordable housing for a minimum of 30 years. And that was already anticipated in our agreement, in our purchase option with Mercy Housing. So it was not a surprise, but there is a point here where we would be operating and potentially doing some engineering work that if the Mercy Housing project fell apart for whatever reason, that Ecology may come back to us to try to recoup 50% of that funding that we'd spent. The risk there is really low because we're not going to go down the path very far on a project with large dollar expenditures without having the covenants in place and the agreement with Mercy. We'll know by March whether they have their funding to do their affordable housing project. So we've got just really a couple months of this time frame, and most of that work is really just going to be getting up to speed on the engineering design. So staff does recommend approval, thinks that risk is very, very low, and we've worked closely with Ecology as well. So with that, I'd be happy to address any questions you might have.
Brian, I have a question just right off the top of my head. You said if they get their money for the project, I thought we were good to go on that.
Yeah, sorry, Commissioner. Yeah, the affordable housing projects get there's certain pots of state funding that come eligible over the course of the year. So they're applying for that right now. And in March, they will know if they've got their funding secured for that. That will allow them to start on the purchase of the property. If they don't get that funding, they would reapply for another round of that. So they currently don't have full funding for the property purchase and the construction of the affordable housing, but by March, they will know if they've secured that financing. They think they're in a really good position because of the project, kind of where it's located, all the elements of it, but there still is a point right now where they don't have that funding in place.
And if they miss this round of funding, when is the next one?
It's on an annual cycle, so it would be next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
they did commit to, if they didn't get funding, that they would reapply for next year. So they've already verbally said that they would anticipate pursuing it next year if they didn't get it.
Commissioner Shepard, questions?
Sure. What is, Brian, can you just describe the timeline a little bit of when this work is expected to happen? Is this something that's going to, all this planning, engineering, and cleanup going to happen in the next year, or what's the timeline?
Yeah, it's actually a really aggressive timeline for the way we operate, honestly. If going back to the Commissioner Briscoe's question, is if they get their notification that they get their funding in award in March, they're obligated to be under construction with their affordable housing project by the end of 2022. So we are going to be starting tomorrow, immediately working on the engineering and design work and permitting to get out in front of the construction of their project. So we're going to do the environmental cleanup ahead of their vertical construction of their project. So there'll be a lot happening over the next 2, 3, 4 months, with the goal of being under construction with the cleanup in October of this year, and then get out of their way so they can start with their affordable housing project by the end in December.
Okay, that's rapid.
Yeah.
How are we doing on parking there? Are we going to be able to satisfy the parking requirements effectively on that site, or is there a opportunity or need for off-site parking that this project would lease or somehow other acquire?
Yeah, they both. So they are able to provide their parking on their property. We are also working with them for working on a license for potential off-site parking agreements as well. So we're working on that right now. That it's parking is always a complicated piece of that, but they're going to be getting feedback from the city's permitting center on required parking, and then we'll be working with them to make sure that footprint fits. And if not, then we'll work with them to develop other options that could provide temporary parking, or a commitment to provide other parking, regional parking in the waterfront district. So it is an issue. Unfortunately, parking continues to be one of the main things you talk about on a project, but it is something we're actively working on. It's not resolved right now, but they do have it's one of the primary next steps of their design. And we could come back to the commission on more detailed information as they are developing their project. This is kind of focused on the cleanup, and we can come with a more Millworks and Mercy focused update, in the coming months, if that's helpful.
I think that would be helpful. It'd be nice to keep us informed on it. I know they're looking at some city money for affordable housing, and it'd be nice to hear an update on their progress towards that as well.
Yeah, we'd be happy to do that. Yeah.
Okay. And could you just describe how this project connects to that other grant we got from Ecology for a larger inventory of brownfield sites?
Yeah, that's when this project first came up a couple of years ago. I think Commissioner Shepherd, you had the idea to potentially look for other opportunities in Whatcom County, like where this funding could be used for affordable housing and cleanup. Ecology really liked that idea. They didn't have any funding at the time, but a few weeks ago they came back and said, hey, they have some funding that could help do an inventory if we were interested. And we dusted that off, and really just last week pulled together an internal project team to start looking at what that could look like. And building on the I-5 corridor study that the economic development team did, is we could add in a county-wide look at where are there contaminated sites that are zoned correctly that could support future affordable housing projects that could be eligible to this new grant program that I described earlier. And so that's something that we are working on right now to develop a scope to see what that could look like. Building on the I-5 corridor study is actually there's a lot of great work in there, and this could be really a powerful tool to kind of keep adding to that, to do these kinds of identifying opportunity zones and opportunity areas for these types of funding. So we don't have the scope developed yet, but that's where we're planning on going. And Ecology has said that they have the funding available, 100% funded again. We'll have to come together in agreement that we bring to the commission, hopefully in a commission meeting here in the next month or so.
Okay, excellent. It's nice to see those studies having some multiple uses and getting kind of connected into different ways. So glad to see that work happening. Thanks, Brian.
Commissioner Bell, any questions? Or
I don't have anything more than what they have. I just want to say thanks, Commissioner Shepherd, for that outreach. It was a great idea. And thanks, Brian, for looking into that. I'm looking forward to seeing that inventory. I'm assuming that only public agencies are able to be recipients of that grant. Is that true?
It's kind of interesting for the inventory. I think so. The interesting thing about this grant program for the affordable housing program that's under development now, they actually are kind of broadening that scope to allow actual private companies to be eligible for those grants if they're doing affordable housing. So like Mercy Housing, our partner on this one, for example, in the future could just be eligible for that grant funding and not have to have a public agency partner. So it's really kind of interesting tool that they're really trying to broaden that the use of those MOTCA funds for things that is definitely needed in our region.
And my last thing is just a gut check, Brian. At 2.6, does that clean it up?
It's really close. Yeah, we developed that budget for them based on the information we had that we knew at the time. I think it should cover everything. We are trying to make that project as seamless as possible so that they can build on the cleanup. So we're designing the cleanup in conjunction with their project so that we're not removing contaminated soil, backfilling it, and then they come back and remove that clean backfill. So we think with that 2.6 that should cover the vast majority of the costs.
And in the event that it doesn't, does that come back to the port for funding?
I think we would make some. I think we'd probably make some design decisions before doing that, and then we'd all have to collectively kind of decide if we wanted to pursue other funding sources. But that's going to be that's one of the first questions we met with the team today, and we're going to continue to refine that as we get more information on the site and the design progresses. We'll continually update the cost estimates and make sure we're not caught by surprise.
Okay, that's all I've got. Thanks.
okay, I already spoke. So if nothing further, Carey, if you please.
A motion authorizing the executive director to enter into a one-time grant agreement program with the Department of Ecology to provide state funding for engineering design activities for Lignum Parcel Affordable Housing Project in the Waterfront District, and amend the 2022 strategic budget to increase both environmental remediation and third-party reimbursement for the Waterfront District for the Lignum Parcel Affordable Housing Project and associated ecology funding.
I'm sorry, but you did so well the first time. I thought we'd try it again.
Thank you, Bobby.
Commissioner Bell,
Yes.
Commissioner Shepherd,
Yes.
and Commissioner Briscoe's a yes as well. Carries 3-0.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you, Brian. So that brings us to the end of our action items, and we I think we're a little too early for our public comment. Are we on time here, or where are we at with our second one?
Never too early for public comment.
Yeah, we've advertised it at the end of this meeting, so if we're at the end of the meeting, then it's appropriate to do public comment.
I guess we'll do that before we do our other business. So is there any further public comment on anything in the meeting here, or anything anyone would like to talk about? Anyone? You see anything, Rob?
I do not.
Okay, gentlemen, we're going to move on to other business. Commissioner Shepherd.
Thanks. Don, if you're available, I wanted to just hear that Alcoa update that you provided to the Small Cities Partnership so that we could all benefit from it, and see if we had any other questions for you on it.
Surely, Commissioner. Don Goldberg, Director of Economic Development. What you're referring to is last week I was asked to testify to the House as well as to the Senate on funding for the reopening of Alcoa. The request is in the governor's budget for just over $7.6 million. It's attached to what I guess would be called greening up the facility if approved. It would remove about 65% of the output. Grab my notes here. Reduce plant-wide CO2 emissions by 65%, approximately 750,000 metric tons per year. It would reduce particulate and fluoride emissions. It would make it one of two so-called green aluminum plants in the US. So that would make a total, if this makes it through the budget process, that would make a total of approximately $10 million for grant money from the state to reopen the facility.
Is there anything we can do to help support this? Or has that already happened, or are there any more actions that we could take to support this type of funding coming through?
I believe that if it makes it to the next round, that there'll be another opportunity for people to speak on behalf of the project. And I believe that Executive Sidhu is planning on doing that. And I'd be happy to let the commissioners know when that time is appropriate for you to do the same.
Yeah, please keep us in the loop on that.
Quick
That'd be
question
great.
on that. Is this dependent upon that funding coming through, or are they committed to going forward without that kind of funding?
They're, from what they've told me, Commissioner, is that they're committed to go forward. The two main items that are left for their going forward are successful contract negotiations with Alcoa and successfully being able to work with BPA on a energy contract.
That seems like the more challenging of the two.
It's a big ask, very difficult to get BPA to do that. But the Blue Wolf people are in discussions with BPA from what I understand.
How many years left on that existing BPA contract?
It expired, and that's the problem.
That is a problem.
That is a problem, yep.
Then we're talking.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I
I
was
was
just gonna say if there was anything
For
else
the record,
for
Don,
us to do
how
there.
many jobs are there?
They're planning on bringing back all 700 jobs, mostly union. We're working in conjunction with Bellingham Technical College, the Lummi tribes for training, and they feel that there's approximately 350 jobs from the previous jobs that will be rehired, and that they'll need to hire 350 new people.
Thank you, Don. Didn't mean to interrupt you, Michael. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna see if any leverage for us to get involved with the BPA discussion. Seems like they're gonna make their own decisions. I don't know if there's much we can do there.
Blue Wolf has got a lobbyist that they're working with, and I know that Blue Wolf and their lobbyists are working with Senator Cantwell's office and others, as well as they have DC operations. So I expect they have it under control to some degree, but I will reach out to them and see if they would like some commission support.
Okay, thanks, appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Don, your team has been successful in other grant projects. I wanted to see if Gina was on the line or if you wanted to share some of the recent broadband grants that we received.
Not sure if Gina is here. Let me check real quick. I don't see her. I thank you for that opportunity, Commissioner. I'm really proud of Gina and her work. And she, last week, towards the end of the week, found out that we were successful at receiving an additional $4 million grant for broadband, which will be matched by, I believe, $1 million from the county. So altogether now we're looking at approximately $10 million in funding.
Great. This is going to allow us to have 3 projects underway in Whatcom County for connecting broadband directly to the home. And so really looking forward to this, and testament to a lot of good work on Gina and our other partners, and just being at the right time with the right projects. You know, there is money available. The money's not going to be available forever. And so we're doing everything we can to be as competitive with these current grant opportunities. And our team has done a great job so far.
Yeah, that funding was extremely competitive. Gina did a great job.
Okay, thanks. Rob, I just had one final question on the dockside market. Do you have any update for us? I saw it was on our consent agenda, but what's that project looking like going forward? And do we have solidified the location, a good home for them for the future?
So right now they're still at Gate 5, and we have hired Carey, who was running Dockside Market for Seafish. She is now a Port of Bellingham employee. The program has been fully absorbed by the Port of Bellingham. Tiffany, Stephanie, and Carey are going to work to make improvements to that program. What you approved today was the rates that the vendors will have to pay. And we're going to continually tweak the rules that the vendors operate under as we see necessary, and work with them to do so. Gate 5 is probably not the best location, but I think it'll work in the interim. I think getting a couple dockside markets over to the waterfront this summer would be a really good thing to do. Mr. Dyson spoke about some transient moorage opportunities in that waterway, and I think that would be a great opportunity to have a market over there on those facilities when they're eventually done. That's a few years out, though. So short term, we're going to keep it at Gate 5 and do a lot of marketing of it, try and get more vendors into it and get more public down there.
And finally, my really last one is, what's the timeline for the RFP for Board Mill?
End of this month. We're shooting for January 31.
Okay,
So a couple weeks.
great. All right, thank you. That's it.
Commissioner Bell.
Did you hear that, Elliot?
He heard it.
Just making sure. Just want to make sure we were on the same page. Okay, mine is pretty simple. We talked last commission meeting about getting more involved with the Whatcom family farmers, and I have done just that and had a few conversations, and out of those conversations came out a tremendous concern. And I want to pass that on to the fellow commissioners. I personally have signed up to testify on this. It is House Bill 1838. Bobby, I notice you're not taking any notes, but I'll remind you at some point, 1838. Essentially, this bill extends the buffers around a farm. And when I was on the Planning Commission, I remember the buffer being a big deal for farmers and what they do. And after spending a great deal of time discussing this with the farmers, it's incredibly burdensome on the farm. It essentially takes away 30,000 acres of farmland in Whatcom County, which will take us below the 100,000 the state would like to have us sustain. It is not necessarily going to improve the salmon population in the way that they expect, because a lot of these areas are not in affected areas. So it's a bill that was essentially, as I described it earlier, it is a machete solution to a project that needs a scalpel. There are places where we need to do some changes to improve in-stream flow. I'm not at all convinced that this is the only mechanism to do it. As a matter of fact, I'm convinced otherwise. When you look at the farmers, they have got a number of different plans in place to improve in-stream flow, improve water retention, and to address these issues directly. The farmers are incredibly concerned about where this is going to go and the impact it's going to have. A lot of those farms, if you put a 200-foot buffer around them, will become housing developments. You do that, you have just taken the impervious surface and multiplied it exponentially and taken away a family farm that we have here in the county. While the intent to improve salmon habitat is a noble one, it is the unintended consequences of this bill are dramatic. So that being said, my goal is to ask you commissioners to take a look at it and weigh in. If you'd like, I would be more than happy to speak on behalf of the commission. Matter of fact, I would like to have you guys talk to me about it. I could actually, I'm going to speak anyway as a citizen, but it would be nice to have you guys at least discuss this with the farmers. The testimony is tomorrow at 10 a.m. Take a look at the bill and see what it's about to do. So from when we talk about economic development, we talk about helping the farmers. This is the first place that we can have an impact on that, and this comes directly from the Whatcom family farmers. And again, I just think it's a ill-conceived bill. I think it takes a sledgehammer to something that doesn't need a sledgehammer. So that's the first one. And then the second one, there are a number of different policing bills up before the state legislature. It's a short legislative session, so I want to make sure that we're paying attention. It's only 60 days. And I don't have a specific one, but I know there's a number of them involving policing of our communities. And as we know, homelessness and protection of our communities are tremendously important in economic development. And a couple of these bills, specifically 1719, inhibits the type of I don't want to say weaponry, but the type of tools that the police officers have at their disposal. It's a pretty broad definition in that bill as to what they can and can't use. And I believe it's too broad. The second one is the Pursuit Bill 1788, which essentially changes the way police officers can pursue criminals. So those are the two that are on my agenda. I happen to have a son-in-law who's a police officer, and both of those came to our attention after a discussion. So we've got policing on the House floor that I think affects the safety of our community. And then we've got a tremendous amount of help we can provide to the farmers by taking a look at the 1838 situation. I think all the mayors are going to weigh in on 1838 because they've been lobbied by the farming community as well. So that's what I have on my agenda for other business. Otherwise, I'm out. But I would love to have a discussion about what you think about the buffers. And I know I hit you cold with something that I'm going to be talking on tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., but please feel free to at least give me your initial reaction.
Well, Ken, the first one, 1838, is right up my alley. And I've had about enough of this stupidness. That buffer will do absolutely nothing to enhance salmon. And everything that's been done so far is not helping the salmon either. They're never going to help the salmon in Whatcom County unless you deal with the predation at the mouths of the streams, in our bays, and now in our rivers. And that's seals and sea lions. And people need to come to grips with the fact that deadly force needs to be used with these critters, bring the numbers of them under control, and then you will have salmon returning. A full-grown adult sea lion will eat his weight in salmon in a week, and that's a scientific fact. And they weigh between 900 and 1,200 pounds on average. So this bill, this buffer thing, is nothing. It will not do anything except destroy our farming communities. It needs to be stopped. It's absolutely stupid. And I don't know who put this up there, but they have no idea what they're doing when they're telling me that it's going to enhance salmon, because I've grown up in this county. I've been in the salmon industry my entire life, and still am. And I see it on a daily basis when I'm on the water in the summertime fishing salmon in Alaska as well as here. The destruction they can do to our salmon stocks, and they're running unchecked because everybody thinks they're warm and fuzzy. They're cute when they're little. They're not so cute when they're grown, and they're devastating. That's where I'm at on that bill. It needs to be stopped, period. So you know well where I'm at. As far as the police thing, I think this stuff has gotten out of control in this country. You know, I don't know who's driving the factor that they don't think people need to be protected and our laws don't need to be enforced. And when police come up against force, they need to use force to stop it. It needs to be right. It needs to be used correctly. It doesn't need to be abused, but it needs to be used. So on both of these, I'm a big no. You know, our children can't ride around in the streets anymore on their bicycles. And this is going to make it better, doing what we're doing, taking authority away from the police, enforce laws, and deal with goofballs. It's absurd what's going on in this country, not just here. It's absurd. So that's where I stand on both of them, Ken, so that you know very clearly where I'm at.
Just a couple of points of clarification. The initiator of the buffer was a guy named Inslee. You may
I don't care who it was.
You may have heard of him.
He still doesn't know what he's talking about.
But second, and then the last one is there's a number of bills in Public Safety Committee on policing. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. I mean, Representative Remmel's got one on about training, which is an excellent bill because it does require the proper training of police officers, and more training could never hurt, right? But there are a number of them that are going to set us backwards, and so I'm just making sure that we pick the ones that we believe in and fight for them. And thank you for your opinion on it. There is no House bill on seal slaughter at the current time, but I'll be looking for that.
There should be.
I'll be looking for that.
Well, you know, there was a time, everybody chuckles, but the State Department of Fish and Wildlife, it was just a Department of Fisheries back in the 50s and 60s, as well as Fisheries and Oceans in Canada, used to control the seal and sea lion population in our two countries here in the Whatcom County and lower BC districts. There was control. And now it's out of control. And no one can figure out why the salmon can't return, and they can't enlarge their stocks. They're getting eaten as fast as they get to the river. So it makes no sense to me to strip people of a livelihood upland, upriver, and blame all the non-salmon improvements on those folks. You know, we had problems. We needed buffers around our streams. Logging practices weren't right. All that stuff's been corrected. Okay, and you still don't see an improvement. So what's that tell you? It tells you that we haven't gotten to the problem yet. We've curtailed our salmon fisheries. Sometimes we don't even have fisheries. That still hasn't improved it. So the problem is the predation. And until they fix that or do something about it, you're not going to enhance the salmon at all. They're not going to come back. They can't. It's physically impossible. So that's where I'm at on that. Any other business, Commissioner Bell?
No, Commissioner Shepard, do you want to weigh in, or are you going to abstain?
I would like to look a little bit more into the bill. I haven't had time to really give it a thorough read. And I've been writing down some of the questions here and the concerns, and I will try and reach out and get a few more answers for myself as well.
I highly recommend that you talk to the Whatcom family farmers.
Okay.
And by that way, same token, Bobby, there's a couple of proposals by the Whatcom family farmers for changes that they believe can do all of the things that we've just discussed without the need for some of these bills to be forwarded. So it's a tremendous resource, and we are establishing a once-a-month meeting with the farmers in the area to be a part of that, as I discussed last time. So I'll let you know when those happen, and we'll just have a public meeting out there sometime if you guys want to attend.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I've got.
Thanks, Commissioner Bell, for moving forward on that. I'm glad you reached out. It was something we said we were going to do, and I'm glad you took the effort to do that. Appreciate that. I think the port needs to be heavily involved with our farming community, and we haven't been there, and we promised we were going to do it. I'm glad to see you put the foot forward, and I appreciate that.
Do you want me to pass on your comments when I do testimony tomorrow?
You can pass on my comments, and I can watch them on here. I mean,
okay.
People just don't understand the predation problem we have at the mouths of our streams and in our streams.
I'm done.
Let's see. Any other, I don't have any other business. Michael, you kind of stole my thunder there with Alcoa and Gina's deal. So thanks for bringing that up. I appreciate that. I was going to ask kind of the very same questions there. I was glad that you brought that up.
Nope. Okay. That's all for me.
Okay, and I have none. So I guess I'll ask for public comment one more time. If anybody has anything to say before we adjourn the meeting. You see anybody raving, Rob? I don't see anyone.
Seen anyone unmute, and there's no one in the room here.
Do you have anything, Director Fix, you need to speak to, or?
No, sir. I'll report quickly that we didn't receive any damage from the tsunami. There's 1 or 2 foot waves in certain areas, but our port fared just fine in that. We're recovering from all the ice and the other bad weather we had in December. Airport traffic seems to be picking back up, although we sure could use that Canadian border to open. And I think we're in pretty good shape for a good 2022.
I would maybe ask a question. How's our Southwest program working?
I think it's
Sunil,
good.
are you here?
Yeah.
Or Rob, either one.
Yeah. Sunil's here if he wants to chime in, but I think it's going well. Here he comes. I'll let him talk.
Good afternoon, Rob. Good afternoon, Commissioner. Southwest is, as expected, doing a load factor about 55-60% typically. They need to be higher, and it's the lack of the Canadian market, which has basically been shut out. They tell me that they're going to remain with us through this period, although the border restrictions are undetermined at this time. I don't know how long they'll endure. I'm hoping that if they can get past the slow season into March, and we see again a resurgence of some holiday travel in March, we should be okay. The loads are lower than I would like them to be at this time.
I was wondering about that with the problems to the north there, if we were going to have some issues. So, okay. So they're still hanging in there for now.
That's what they're telling us. They've made a commitment to the region, and they want us to continue with the marketing campaign north of the border, despite the border restrictions, and we're doing that.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Sunil.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's all I have. Any last call for any public comment, or anyone else have anything to say here before I adjourn the meeting? The meeting adjourned.